Hey everybody, welcome to Pale in Comparison, a proud member of the Doof Network. In this podcast, my Sib from another crib uses her knowledge of the Otherverse to take a look at Pact, Wildbow's least chill work, and I try not to give away any spoilers. I'm Elliot, and Malia convinced me to keep Jenny locked in the mirror world just one more time.
I'm Malia, and Jenny convinced me to work at his cool law firm for 570 years. Now that's what I call job security. This episode, we are covering Histories, Arc 15. Before we get into that, however, I'd like to issue a spoiler warning. This podcast is filled with pale spoilers. If you don't know about Percival Awarenok II of the 100 of titles, the first of which is...
Oh, huzzah, huzzah.
That's all? Perfect. And don't want us to tell you, stop now, read Pale, and come back to this podcast. As for Pact, there will be full spoilers to the chapters we are covering.
I hope... Sorry, I'm just going to start talking about 24.a. I hope Ottawa did patch the huzzah, loop. I mean, they have to have, right?
Yeah, well, I guess, does anyone know about the huzzah loop?
Yeah, did they know that he figured that out? Yeah, exactly. I hope they did.
I hope they know that he figured it out. Because at that Carmine contest, no one saw them.
Yeah, it's pretty closed doors. That's a whole thing. So
maybe the Sable somehow was able to be like, by the way.
Yeah, or maybe they sort of left it in there on purpose that time for some reason. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That's all.
Let's see. Also, a quick note about the Pale Complexions fan art contest. I don't know exactly when this episode's coming out, but chances are the deadline is closed, and so if you're a patron, it's probably time to get voting.
Woo! Thanks for everyone who submitted. We're excited to see the ones that come in between now and the time this airs, and who wins. It's very exciting.
Yeah. But yeah, and apologies if there's any sort of delays getting that vote out or the final results. We will all be in Hawaii, so we'll be doing our best, but it's going to be a busy time for everyone.
Yes.
Most of all, Malia.
Yes. I thought you were going to say most of all you, because you have so many scuba things, so many scuba appointments.
Yeah, I need to actually sit down and double check whether I'm going to be okay to fly. I'm gonna have to check my nitrogen levels and maybe cancel one.
Yeah, don't
We'll
book
see.
them too close.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, well, I'll get into the chapter summary, and then I guess we can start talking about 15.x. So yeah, our nameless diabolist man comes home and finds that he has the worst house guest of all time crashing in his kitchen, Mahoon. He manages to call in, quote unquote, help, and man lets him join the hottest firm around. And it's hot because it's from hell. All it costs him to join is everything. We jump forward to his orientation day. We learn some cool lore about demons and the firm in general. And we get to see fan favorite Miss Lewis, who then takes our nameless POV to meet up with Granny Rose, who is her blunt and unhelpful old self. But she does give us some insight into how horrible Miss Lewis actually probably is. And with this in mind, we finally cut to the present where Levin manages to get Miss Lewis to stop playing with her food. And so she kicks up her attack and summons Fell, Callan, and Laird to join the battle. What did you think of this chapter, Malia?
It was pretty upsetting in every way, including Wildbow embarrassing me yet again by being like, "Oh, you liked Miss Lewis?"
Yeah. Even when she was in the chapters in like last week, we were talking about it, and I kept having to consciously remind myself that's no, she's pretending because I fall for it every time.
I know. There's still part of me that's like, no, what if?
Yeah. Maybe this guy's wrong.
It's right. But I mean, it was great. I did want to see more about the firm. I wish it was longer. And so I loved it.
Yeah, awesome. It is one of those ones that makes you wish the chapters in Pact were as long as Pale, because it's such a brief glimpse we get.
I feel like I do want a little bit more about like we only get one kind of standard like task that the lawyers do. I guess coming up to like kill some pesky diabolus at the end is like vaguely standard, but I just wanted a little bit more of like what is it like to actually be one of these dudes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of implication that it's not great.
Right.
Like there's talk of sending him to a house in Berlin, I think it was. Um,
Hamburg,
okay. Same diff. Um,
the
no,
Hamburg house.
yeah, yes. And I mean, I wouldn't even call it subtext. It's heavily implied that that would be a bad time for some
Right.
reason. Yeah, and I think, and I've never really quite understood why. I think there's a general consensus that this guy is the lawyer who gave Blake the ride to Toronto, like in
Mhm.
4.1.
Mhm.
So I guess that's another potential day is, giving Blake a lift.
That's true. He seemed pretty happy to be doing that.
Yeah, well, you would be now that we know what, or we've had, vague implications of what the other days can be.
Right.
Hanging out with Blake does seem like a good day. But yeah, well, I guess so. Let's get further into the chapter. So we'll start with the opening section, which is where this diabolist who doesn't even get a name comes home and finds Mahoon crashing in his kitchen, and Mahoon injures him.
Oh my god. I like that this practitioner doesn't have a name because, like as far as we know, none of the practitioners in the firm have names until they make it if they make it to the top 3 spots.
Mm.
Um
Oh, well, even then, I know, like, something that always has jumped out to me is this guy calls Man, Levin, and Lewis, and then we meet Miss Lewis, and she's not a partner yet. So there's almost an implication that she gets the name Miss Lewis when she becomes the partner, like, not necessarily the other way around. Like, the partners don't get their original names. It's almost like a title, I guess.
right. Um like I'm assuming that when one of them leaves for some reason, someone else can get slotted in as Man,
Yeah.
Levin, or Lewis. Um
Yeah, so that, like, none of them, like, I guess, it costs them everything, including their name, I guess.
Mhm. And, like, while this practitioner, when we see him at the beginning, does presumably still have a name, I think it's more effective that we don't know it.
Mhm.
Um, because, like, I'd just be calling him, like, Jake or whatever throughout, like, the rest of this
Yeah,
thing. And he'd be Jake, but he's not. He's just, like, a guy. And, like Fisher has a name. Like, I liked
yeah,
that detail that he's the nameless person in this. Um
good point.
Yeah, it kinda reminds me this is a weird thought, but it reminds me of, some Gothic novels, um, in particular, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, something like that. The protagonist doesn't have a name, like the narrator,
Oh, okay.
she's the second Mrs. De Winter, and that's the only name we get through her throughout the entire story, which is fascinating.
What is
Um
that one of those? Because I've read a few books from that time, and they're often from the perspective of someone writing letters and stuff, like, is it like that? So she's just not naming herself?
no,
Oh, no? Okay.
Yeah, it's not letters, but yeah, it's just the second Mrs. De Winter the whole time because she gets married to this guy at like the very beginning of the novel and then goes back to this house and it's like his first wife Rebecca is like haunting her kind of maybe. Um but yeah, something about that, like Rebecca becomes such a huge presence in the novel. And the novel's so much about her, um, and not about this like small it is about this small woman who has come and like married the super rich dude or whatever and lives here now. But that compare like her not having a name really like diminishes her in
Mm,
a way that I think is effective in setting up Rebecca as this like huge figure. And in a way like this dude is diminished. Like he's just a a shell, he's just like a vehicle for us to learn about this chapter more than he is a person, which is interesting.
yeah. And especially when you compare it, I mean, even in this story, we followed Mags for a bit when she was just the girl in the checkered scarf.
Mhm.
Like she didn't have a name for a bit, and that was, destroying her and ruining herself.
Mhm.
And one thing we've learned about the lawyers very recently is that they're not permitted to die. So like I feel like this is probably a thing where it's like this is still bad for himself and tears him up inside and all that, but he's not permitted to actually disintegrate because his employment takes precedence.
Right.
Yeah. Should we talk about Fisher?
Yeah.
And this makes me so sad every time. Like, this is maybe the worst thing that happens in Pact.
I mean, like, you're probably right. It's just like so many awful things happen in this story, but also this is so awful.
Like, because Fisher's like, please don't. Like, just say no. And he
Just
says
say
yes.
no. Like, just die now. And he's like, and I, it's such a powerful moment establishing who this person is and like what these lawyers are and who they are.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, Fisher has a name. He's a little toad. He's hiding in a pocket. He's looking out for his dude. Like, and even without Snowdrop and all these other things that I think about with Pale, like we have Evan. We have
Hmm.
like an incredibly strong like practitioner familiar bond that we get to see in this story. And so it's like, this is your familiar, this is a toad, and he pauses. He's like, oh fuck. When he's like, oh, you have a familiar and we'll take him and do whatever we want. And he says like, please don't, but he
Yeah.
agrees. Like,
I do think, I think you're right. Like, I think Fisher, the few lines he does have are written to invoke Evan a little bit in our heads because he's
mhm,
definitely like, he's making a little joke when they first meet Mahoon. Like, I think he is meant to remind you a little bit of Evan, even though he is clearly very different. It's just like, that's a heartstring Wildbow has to sort of pull on to make this moment even more painful.
right. Because you're not getting like Briar Girl Bear
Yeah.
energies. You're getting more like partners and a little bit more like this familiar is vulnerable. Um
Yep.
and so where I went from like, oh fuck, this dude is like had his legs blown off and is like in all this pain and is lying here, like you don't really know the situation, but you feel like I felt really bad for him and was like, this is awful. And I can maybe kind of see why someone would call the lawyers in this situation.
Yeah.
But then, like, immediately signing Fisher over to them makes you hate his guts. Or at least made me hate his guts. I was like,
Oh
"Oh,
yeah.
no, fuck you." Right?
Well, I think
Um,
like
yeah.
the what are the recurring beats we get in this chapter is that this guy does not make good decisions. And it's just like another real like as you said, Fisher is sort of his moment to be like, oh, this is a bad call. Like I should not do this, and he still does it. And then he finds out this is probably even worse. So it's just
It's so selfish and interesting, like, you know, heroes and stories do, I guess, the self-sacrificial thing, do the Blake thing, and
yeah,
don't fall for stuff like this, and seeing someone agree to this, uh, helps make people like Blake feel more extraordinary, but also to condemn another person, and then it makes sense where it's like, oh, like, he used demons to get a bunch of money, which that's a horrible fucking reason to use demons. Like, what the fuck? And then he, like, ended up summoning this, like, crazy powerful one, which then, like, started turning his family members into, like, diabolists who were then possessed by other demons or whatever. Like, it's just like, oh, you're, like, a complete piece of shit. And also, like, he just doesn't ever. It seems like he doesn't ever acknowledge that he did anything wrong. And there's that interesting moment where he like feels like he should feel sorry. He's like he wanted to think that this was karma and that he was like being punished for the bad things he had done or whatever, but
yeah.
like he couldn't, it wasn't just like, but this was too awful and like this felt like too much. It was like he couldn't even feel sorry for the horrible shit that he's done.
Yeah, he reminds me of the Aurum a bit, actually.
Oh my
Like,
god.
probably even worse than the Aurum. But the Aurum had that same vibe of he was just like playing stupid games to get rich
Mhm.
and getting the universe up in his grill because because he was pissing it off and managed to kind of. Well, I mean, I guess the Aurum actually kind of failed upwards, whereas this guy, did not. Seemingly, but yeah, it's a similar sort of vibe of just creating messes and not really taking any responsibility for that part as much as he maybe should.
Right, and condemning his familiar in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Wow, yeah, they do feel very similar. Um,
But yeah, and then Mahoon is sitting in this uh kitchen. Just I love all the details about how big his shadow is. It lends him this really cool
mhm.
presence.
Yeah, it's how he breathes and his shadow expands and it warps everything in the kitchen.
Mm.
It's really interesting, and just how I mean, one thing that I don't get about demons, I guess, is I guess, like, we've seen Barbatorem and we've seen him work, and it's not like he's omnipresent. Like, he is constrained to his body, it seems like, and, he can move really fast and do everything, but it's not just like, if he gets out, you're immediately dead or whatever, and this dude's just, like, chilling in this guy's kitchen, and I guess, like, I don't know what demons can do necessarily. Like, Ur was like absorbing anything that got near it, but and so I guess I sort of figured that other demons would be more like that. But this dude's just like, I'm gonna chill in this kitchen and torture this guy, I guess. And like, does he have to go back to wherever he came from after this? Is he like gonna go down the street and like, like I'm not quite sure what Mahoon has the ability to do here. He seems bummed that he calls the lawyers. Um I don't know if it's cuz like, oh no, I don't get to torture you anymore. Uh
Yeah,
but
well,
yeah.
I'm reminded of, I think it was like Faisal's interlude, where Faisal kind of went on a bit of a thing about how like there is no grand plan or coordination between a lot of the angels. Like a lot of them are
Mhm.
just kind of doing their own thing. And I just always kind of assumed with demons it's a bit the same. Like there is this huge variability in what abilities and stuff they have.
Mm.
And yeah, like they're all just kind of doing their own thing. like, like I think something this chapter does establish is that the lawyers aren't this omnipotent cabal associating with all demons or anything. Like Mahoon is very separate from the lawyers. In fact, there's even implications that if man upset him here, he could obliterate man.
Mm.
Um, so there's like I just assume that like the demons are very variable and there's all sorts of things each one can do or whatever, and they're just kind of all running around destroying their own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I that you said, like, about him being able to destroy man too is, like, I don't quite understand the relationship between them. Um, like, at one point it said in the chapter that, like, the man, Levin, and Lewis are just below demons in the, like, power structure or whatever. Um, but it's
Yeah,
and I guess with
oh, sorry. You go.
what? Oh, I was gonna say, like, I guess with Miss Lewis, like, she also, I think, like, asks even for, like, the imp's favor or whatever. Like, she's not, like, commanding them, um, like how other practitioners deal with others or whatever. It's always like, like, please do me this favor or whatever. Um, and so I guess, like, who established this firm and why is it here?
I assume it was like presumably seventh choir demons. I assume demons
Hmm,
started it, and because it seems like a tricky long term plan, I assume seventh choir.
sure.
But yeah, like yeah, my guess is that it's like there's some demons who kind of own the firm and have set it all up, and then that's why it's like as agents of those seventh choir or whatever demons, that's the relationship between someone like Man and Mahoon. Is like Mahoon would just see Man as an agent of those demons,
Hmm.
basically like their summon in a way.
Cool. Uh,
Um, but yeah, and like there's some fun stuff here with like Bahoon, and it's like it's really unclear what choir he might even belong to. Like there's this real sense that like he's so big, it seems hard to categorize him.
right. Um, it so like apparently some of the demons in the Choir of Unrest write books like their
Yeah.
Diabolus and send them out into the universe to like make more Diabolus. Um, which immediately made me think of Black Lamb's Blood and like, was that written by a demon? Um, fascinating. Um, it it seems like the demons are not bound by the seal. Um, there's even a line I think that someone says at some point. Yeah, even if the demon noble wasn't bound, there was a certainty to his words that gave him power. Um,
Mm.
and I'm assuming that that means like, yeah, he's not bound to the Seal of Solomon. So presumably he can lie. Um, but I don't know if part of it is just like, I mean, part of it is just like spirits will ignore you if you don't speak the truth because they'll not give your words as much weight. So
Mm,
presumably that would also apply to demons and whatever. Um, but it,
yeah. Well,
yeah.
demons have an interesting relationship with spirits, I think. Like it was I think it was the Granny Rose diary, or but the second one, like in I think it was 7.x, where she was talking about how that was the one where it was like there were first choir demons and it would like replace people with statues. But her
Mm,
theory was that it's not that the demon is creating the statue, it's like the demon obliterates the person and then the spirits kind of fill in the vacuum. Like the spirits are like, oh shit, there's meant to be a person there, and they kind of put a statue there because it's as close as they're going to get. Um,
right.
and I think it's even said that like and maybe even Barbatorem, it's like they don't look like they do. That's just like the spirits kind of doing a best guess approximation. Like it's like, they're these weird things that like is just sort of darkness and violence. And so the spirits, when you look at it, the spirits just going, I don't know, put a bunch of like teeth and muscles and shit there. That'll do. Is sort of the vibe I get. So it's like
Right.
the way that the way that demons work with spirits, and this applies to Faisal a bit too, I imagine. Like they have interesting relationships with the spirits because they kind of command them in a different way to humans or others, I think.
Right. The idea that, yeah, angels and demons aren't exactly others is interesting. But I mean, there's no clear lines in this universe. And, you can
Mm.
take an angel as a familiar, like he's an other, but also, yeah, they're not.
Yeah. Well, Faisal's interlude talked a lot. He was changed by humanity. I think he said like he's become more humanish
Hmm.
in his intelligence and his appearance. And like that was because of the influence humans have had. So it's definitely not like they're untouchable.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's like parts of them that are, I think, fundamentally different to most other things.
Right. I mean, in the same way that humans are kind of fundamentally different, um,
Yeah,
it's like angels create, demons destroy, and humans change, and a lot of other stuff can like do that as well. But and maybe it's mostly the seal that does this, but it's harder to like bind humans, and it's harder to, um, they seem to have a really big influence on others, and other things that feels significant. I don't know.
yeah. Sorry, I've lost the train of how we got. I'm trying to remember why we were talking about this.
We were
How
talking
it's
about the seventh choir.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm with it now. I was like, wait, why? What was the point that I was trying to make when I started talking?
Yeah. I was wondering, what choir do you think they have Mahoon classified as? His thing is he turns people into like monsters or killers or diabolists. Uh, and I guess that made me think like Choir of Sin because it's a person related thing. But what do you
Yeah,
think?
it feels like it must like I agree. I thought sixth, and then there's that sort of implication by man that he's like, oh, maybe we have you wrong. Maybe you're kind of more seventh.
Right.
Um, and yeah, my guess would be six because there was also the element of like how much he seemed to prey on greed, which
Hmm.
feels like well, that's one of the seven deadly sins, right? Like that
Right.
feels like it would be a sixth choir jam.
Right, because he's not just like, it's very focused on humans and fucking with them and not like turning them insane. So it seems, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, so then this is when Man, our favorite lawyer, gets called in. And yeah, sort of chats to Mahoon for a little bit while this dude is just unconscious on the ground before waking him up and getting him to join the firm.
Well, it's ridiculous where when he goes and like slaps him in the face or whatever, he's like, "You only have 30 minutes and you chose to spend like
Yeah.
some of that time wallowing." I'm like, I don't know that that's an accurate representation, but okay.
Yeah, choose feels like an arguable verb there.
It's like you chose to ignore him and talk to that demon. Like, okay. One of the things I really liked about this was when he decides to talk to the practitioner and he moves the rug
Yeah.
um without like just using the spirits or whatever, and I think he said like it's a simple but not easy trick or something like that. And
Mm.
it's like he says like, oh, people can do this in their domain. Like in your domain, we see Verona do cool shit. Like the spirits
Yeah.
kind of get used to you, and they know who you are, and they start to get stuff and do stuff and listen to you. But like being able to treat anywhere like that means that you have to be recognizable to spirits anywhere.
Which
And
is
so
crazy.
it's insane. But also I was like, oh, like, you have like universal name recognition. And for some reason I was like, oh, so man is Coca-Cola. Like, like,
What?
man,
Or
like,
like the Mickey Mouse logo. Like,
right. Or McDonald's or something. Like, I don't know why I didn't think like man is, I don't know, Brad Pitt or something, like a human. But no, like, man is beyond.
yeah. Well, we just talked earlier about how they've had a lot of their self stripped away from them. So yeah, he's closer to
True.
Coca Cola, I guess.
And it's funny the idea of thinking that like the spirits get all like excited, and maybe for man it's not like a happy excited, but like if like if Brad Pitt just sort of like walks into your house and is like, hi, can I get some water or whatever, like just
Yeah,
sort of like
yeah.
I'm imagining these random like rug spirits or whatever being like, ooh.
Yeah, in this case, it might be more like I
Like,
don't know,
ah,
like
fuck.
some yeah, like a dictator or like
Sure.
mass murderer, sort of like
Less positive.
yeah. But if a dictator comes to my door and is like, "Can I have a glass of water?" I'm gonna get that glass of water because I'm not like I just want that glass of water to get given, and then they leave. Hopefully, maybe that's what these spirits like. They're like, give him the rug. The quicker he gets in and out, the better."
Right.
I love this line where when our nameless protagonist's legs get removed, he describes it. He says it was pain in the same way that a tsunami is water,
Mm,
and then goes into even more detail about how horrible it is. But I just wanted to call that line out. I really love that. It's so evocative of just like helping you understand that this is like incomprehensible pain.
right. But then a little bit later, he talks about like falling forward and hitting his chin on the tile without like using your arms to stop it or whatever. And
Mm,
like that was like nothing in all of this crazy pain. And that helped me focus in on it more. Cause just the word pain is so nebulous. But like the idea of like falling and hitting your chin, like like oh
mm.
um, I felt it, but I felt that more than my legs getting ripped off. Like that's just harder to comprehend.
My chin is just hurting having this conversation, and my teeth.
Like, I don't even know if I've ever actually done that. I'm sure I've hit my chin on something because it wouldn't
Mm.
make sense to be able to feel that like sympathetically, but I can't. Just
Oh, and
hmm.
oh yeah, sorry. I just wanted to call out the little part where like we get it established that Mahoon is a noble demon, and I don't know that we knew that that was a title, but I love that as a kind of like just the idea of it being because I think it's been like moat and mid tier demon and stuff. Now it's like a noble, and you just sort of it made me think of like in card games and stuff where it's like suddenly you have the picture cards like the king, like it just makes him sound it's such a title.
Right. This was like, oh shit. Like, because even I think Barbatorem is described as like moderate or something.
Yeah.
And so this is like, oh, you fucked up. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why the fuck did you do this? And yeah, it's not like greater or I mean maybe there's greater and then there's noble or something, but noble seems like a little bit of a shift from a lot of
Mm.
the other words as well. But immediately you're just like, oh fuck.
Yeah, there's something like the way it's kind of refined as a title just makes it it suits this way Mahoon just kind of sits there and just has that presence like and you're just like, oh, this is it's not like, because Barbatorem and kind of felt like crazy monsters a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time, whereas
Mm-hmm.
Mahoon is just a clever, evil guy almost.
Right. He reminds me more of Corvidae or
Mm.
that one guy's boogeyman familiar from Fell's ancestor.
Yeah.
Can't remember his name.
The guy who, like, stole faces or something. I don't remember what his
Right.
name was. Yeah.
For some reason kind of reminded me of him, even though I kind of liked him. But yeah, a more put together vibe, I guess.
Yeah. Do you reckon this guy's worked with Faisal before? I'm desperate to ship Faisal with somebody.
Well, there's Faisal and Barbatorem, I guess.
Yeah, true. That's probably the most sensible one.
Yeah, I don't feel like they'd vibe super well though.
Yeah,
Faisal's
that's one
more
of those
like
things.
prissy.
Yeah, you know when and when people used to say like Brett and Edith should get together in Pale, and it was like, oh, neither of them deserve that. Like, you know, Barbatorem doesn't deserve Faisal as much as Faisal doesn't deserve Barbatorem.
Yeah, I just also don't feel like their vibes match very well. Like I can't see what would attract them to each other.
Yeah, that's why it's such good drama, Malia. This is why it's going to be the spin-off story. It's like, you know, odd couple opposites attract vibes. He's a slob with a horse head, and you know, he's a prissy dog, and now they're roommates.
Right, for when Faisal inevitably is trapped in the abyss as well because they can't fix the whole thing with the pipes.
What a
They live
place
down the
to be
street.
roommates.
They live down the street from the witch, and she's just like, ugh. And it's like, you know, listens to them bitch about each other and brings them over pie.
When the drama gets too much, the abyss actually just spits them out. It's like, I can't with you two anymore.
You've
Like, maybe
changed
that's the
enough, goodbye.
yeah, maybe that's the trick to getting out of the abyss. It's just to be like so insufferable that the abyss is just like, oh, I can't handle this guy. I get out. Anyway, was there anything else from this section that you wanted to call out?
Yeah, I just like the ominousness of you know, you won't get to die for a long, long time.
Hmm.
Like you, unless you're really lucky, you won't be dying for a long time. And it does step up the like, oh fuck, oh shit, whatever. But I wish I saw a little bit more of what about the job sucks
Yeah, it'd be great
instead
to
of
have
yeah.
had a Hamburg House section.
Right.
Probably awful as well, but cool.
You're not a long section.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. So we jump ahead. Fisher is gone. R.I.P. Fisher, or hopefully. Um,
Hopefully.
and so we see a bit of our nameless protagonist's orientation day. Man gives him a bit of a lecture about how demons work, how the firm works, and then Miss Lewis comes and takes it. Well, she's not Miss Lewis yet. She's just next in line for partnership, but she comes and takes charge.
I this lecture was one thing where I felt a little bit bad because like I don't really understand what he was saying. He was like, "Yeah, like there's tears and there's speech and imps can speech because they're kind of or can talk because they're kind of like human and nobles can talk because they're like broad." And I'm just like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And like this was where I was kind of like, "Oh, like you need to study a bunch like what is he even talking about? Like this is nonsensical." And I don't know if anyone else was able to be like, "No, this is the thing he was talking about." But I was just like, "Why are you talking? What are you talking about?"
So I think my understanding of what he's saying is that so there's like the levels of demons, right? Like imps are the babies, and then nobles are like the granddaddies
Uh-huh.
or grandmummies, and um, then there are things like speech where it's inverted from what humans are because demons are, you know, opposites and bad and stuff. So like imps, because imps are like babies, they can
They can
talk because babies can't talk. And similarly,
Okay.
nobles are like really old people who start to lose their ability to talk. So the nobles get it back. Whereas if you're in the middle when humans can talk, you can't because so it's like they're always their ability to talk is kind of the opposite of where they map to in a human lifespan.
Okay. So why can Barbatorem run?
I mean, well, I guess it doesn't apply to everything. um,
Sure.
yeah,
But
and
okay, now that makes more sense.
yeah, like you know, but like that's why Barbatorem, I guess, can't talk, despite the fact that you know, I think his body is described as being like you know pretty adult and ripped. So yeah, I don't know why I always assumed
Fucking
Barbatorem was
shredded.
hot. Like horse head aside, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but like I assume he was like he had like you know a body that I would consider goals head aside.
Yeah, I mean, in the circle, wasn't he described as kind of like a dumpy old man? But then I guess that was in the circle.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe
'Cause
I'm just wrong. I just assume he's shredded. Like, he
no,
goes
I
to the
do
gym.
picture him as shredded when he's running around with the horse head.
Yeah. Good
Um,
on him.
well, if you're bound for that long, you gotta entertain yourself
Yeah.
some way.
It's like how people get ripped in prison, right? Like,
Right.
he started as like a kind of dumpy, floppy body when Rose bound him, but he got jacked in the seal.
Yes. Oh, that's great. Some of the stuff didn't line up in terms of them being like, "You'll be lucky to die," but then man says, "You'll learn quickly or you'll die," and that felt
Yeah.
inaccurate, like, or something. Because presumably, if it was really awful, people would just let themselves die or something? I don't
That's what I
know.
was thinking. Yeah, it's like if death is kind of really an option, you have to assume people be like, "Oh, whoops! Like, I spilt bad juice everywhere. Guess I'm dead." Um, I wonder if like die in the sense of like if you don't learn quickly, you'll die is more like you'll serve
You'll
the
be
rest of your
fucked.
term in Hamburg House or something. Like we'll
Right,
just
right.
will permanently loan you to Hamburg House or something, and they get you for 570.
Right. Well, this was just one of the moments where I started to kind of like doubt and question what these people were saying. Cause, like, again,
Mm.
like, we see, I think that demons aren't bound to the seal, and being bound to the seal helps give your words weight. Um, but maybe there's still something in telling the truth that helps with the practice in spirits and whatever, which is still useful. But like Ms. Lewis to be and Mr. Man like totally contradict each other in a way that like raised my hackles, I guess, just made me kind of like, like, why are you gainsaying him so hard or whatever? Like, it just because and this instance of you'll learn quickly or you'll die felt like another weird instance of like, is this can't are they just more loose with their words here, or
Mm.
in terms of like exaggeration or scaring people, or are they something? Because like Mr. Man had said that Mr. Mahoon was going easy on him, and Ms. Lewis to be definitively says no, he wasn't going easy on you. And
Yeah.
based on what we understand in the other verse, like one of them is right and the other one is gainsaid or whatever. And so it's I don't know, it's feeling I don't know if it's important or if it's just like a detail about them that Wildbow knows and is portraying but won't actually matter to the story, but it feels like there's something weird happening.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's probably like, and I'm just speculating here, like interesting relationships between practitioners under the lawyer's domain and like their interaction with karma and
Mhm.
with gainsaying. Because yeah, like as you say, it probably how much they're still attached to the seal probably gets really bloody murky now that they essentially seemingly work for demons or whatever. Like maybe being gainsaid isn't a problem in the same way, or who knows? I
Mhm.
mean, Miss Lewis is shown to be, the next in line. She's trying to climb the ladder. Maybe she's just like a heartless corporate exec who, stabs her boss in the back to try and move up the ladder.
Yeah. But then, like, does that mean Mahoon wasn't going easy? Or is it part of, like, saying things definitively makes the spirits kind of take your side
Yeah.
more? It's
Well,
yeah.
because I think her point, as I understood it, is almost more like I think Man is talking about like Mahoon was going easy on this guy, like when they were in the kitchen, but then Miss Lewis implies that he wasn't going easy on him when he let him sign up with the lawyers, because this is part of her
Hmm.
speech of like, oh, this is worse. Like you think this was better than being with Mahoon, like you're wrong. So like maybe they're both right. They were just talking about like different
Different
phases, and it's like Miss
things.
Lewis's point is it's like when Mahoon let you call the lawyers, that's when he was no longer going easy on you.
Sure. That's interesting. Yeah, because that moment where he calls for the lawyers, like, I mean, immediately, like, oh, he's taking, like, he's gonna join. But Mahoon goes from smiling to like no longer smiling, and
Yeah,
so I mean that he's a demon, so it's probably like impossible to interpret accurately. In that moment, it feels like he was like, "Oh fuck!" Like
yeah.
they're taking my toy away or whatever. Like I can't fuck with them.
But maybe that's the trick. Like,
R-
because I definitely fell for that. Like,
Right.
there's a moment when I was reading the chapter and the guy calls men Levin and Lewis, I was like, and Mahoon stopped smiling. I was like, he's done it. This is a victory. Like, this guy can't but cross the lawyers. We've done it. And then, yeah, like later on, the chapter is telling us it's like, no, actually, he lost even harder when he called the lawyers. So maybe that was a subtle play by Mahoon to get this guy to go with the lawyers.
To keep, calling them.
Yeah.
Because he had only said their name once. I mean, or it was just like, Mahoon isn't personally fucking with this guy anymore, so maybe that was a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, she does say immediately after he wasn't going easy on you that you've jumped from the frying pan to the fire. So I think that's a good interpretation of that. It's also funny that like I feel like Man made it seem more like the 500 whatever years would be a long time. You won't get to die for a long, long time. And Ms. Lewis is like 570. Like, what the fuck? Like, why are you even here? Why didn't you just what? Like,
yeah. Are you even going to get vacation days? Like,
right? Like, you're not even long enough to earn any PTO. Like, what are you doing? Why are you here?
Is this some new internship program that I didn't know about?
Right. And you could have paid off that karmic debt in a lifetime, not if I died. And she's like, bitch, what? Like, and that makes me wonder, like, is it just that, when Man showed up, he was like, he's not permitted to die right now or whatever. And I wasn't sure if that's just he's called me, so he's good for the next 30 minutes, or if that's like a Diabolus thing.
I assumed Mahoon wasn't going to let him go that easy. I assumed that was a Mahoon thing. Like, in the same way when the barber cut off Alistair's hand, but it didn't bleed because, the barber doesn't want his victims bleeding. I assume Mahoon has similar capabilities, where it's like he can chop off your legs and you can bleed everywhere, but you're not going to die because then what's Mahoon going to play with?
Right.
But I mean, it could be any of the above. There's so many forces in play here that could be stopping this guy from dying.
Right. But yeah, it made me wonder, like, what was he supposed to do other than join the firm? I guess possibly like get in, but like, how do you pay off the karmic debt other than like suddenly becoming a nicer person? Like,
yeah, be really nice to Mahoon as he tortures you to death.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this guy's right. He probably couldn't have paid off his karmic debt, but I guess Miss Lewis's point would probably be that you're probably better off dying with that bad karma than spending this time at the firm.
This man.
He's not, yeah. I've just been reading 24.a of Pale, which also includes a character who I don't think makes the best decisions. But this guy's got him beat.
Yeah, as bad as the St. Victor's kids have it in terms of like what they've gotten themselves wrapped up in, like it could have been worse.
yeah. Do you think Charles has them reading this chapter before bed? Just like remind them that, his side's pretty good actually.
I'm not the worst. Like the Abyss, come on. The Abyss doesn't even like these guys, can't handle.
But yeah, okay, so our nameless POV teams up with Mrs. Lewis to go visit one of their clients. It's Granny Rose, and she is, just kind of an asshole, to put it simply, but in a fun way. It's very fun when her assholery is pointed at these idiots. And yeah, she grills our new intern guy for some information, and then because he's useless, he doesn't have any, so she gives him some information instead, which is, don't trust Miss Lewis, she's crazy.
But also not, which is part of how
true.
horrifying she is.
She was like that when she got here, yeah.
I love Grandma Rose so much. I clamor for Grandma Rose examples. And she's just so fun. I think that one of the reasons she liked Ambrose so much, potentially, is, Blake in the first chapter greets her by just like insulting her to her face. And she does that to this guy like several times in this or whatever. She's like, you stupid little man. And it's just like, yeah. Like,
yeah, good point. I love that.
Like, I would like talking to someone like this in real life or whatever, but it's weirdly refreshing and like fun and just like really reminds me of Blake. In
Yeah,
that
I love
not
that connection.
afraid to say the thing, but like not like Blake in a scary old lady way. I don't know.
Mm.
But yeah, the moment they say rose bushes, like the moment they say old lady, you're like, and they say rose bushes, and you're like,
Yeah.
ah!
Yeah. I know. It's so I love how this universe there's just stuff like that. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. This is Rose. It's covered in rose bushes. She would. Yep.
She's the best. um, it's interesting that they're like, you know, she's never joining us, but also maybe, um, is the fun little hook that they can like maybe get this woman or her grandchildren.
Yeah.
Um, and Ms. Lewis to be says she has 5 lifetimes of karmic debt, um, which is way more than 570 years apparently per lifetime. And I thought that in the letter to Blake and Rose at in arc 1 she said there's 7 lifetimes, like decrease it by at least 1.
Oh,
And
I
so
do not remember that detail, but yeah, could be.
I'm gonna double check because I think it was something like that.
Maybe
And I'm like,
maybe
shit, you
she had
added 2 extra lifetimes.
I mean, she did use Barbatorem on her own grandkid. That's got to be one of them at
Gonna be
least, right?
1, yeah.
Like, I'm not a karma expert. I defer to Lucy on this, but like that seems like a shit move.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
That does make it pretty funny that her letter was all like, "You have to decrease the family karma." Oh, and it's like, lady, you added 2 at least. Like,
you did
hypocrite.
this. Uh, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to see if I could. Oh, Laird.
I've just had a quick search and I cannot find it, but it was a brief search.
I I think it's in 1.3. I think I'm almost at it. Well, yeah, the letter just says less of a debt. I don't know why I think they have 7 years or 7 lifetimes, but
I'm
it's
willing to believe it. I don't remember where that number came from, but like the idea that between now and her death, Granny Rose accumulated some more. It's not. It's far from impossible.
she's yeah, I love her.
Oh, so I love how, as you mentioned, we set up these stakes where Miss Lewis is like, okay, now we really want, like, you can't stuff things up with this woman because it's pretty unlikely, but we really, 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 really want her in the firm. So do whatever. And then Grandma Rose just comes out the gate wielding that energy against them. And she's like, you go into the library, I'm going to grill this dude because if you don't, I'll be upset. And so I have that over you. So I'm the client from hell. Like, she's a full Karen here and you'll love it.
Right, it's so I mean, she doesn't even have to, like I
Pretend.
mean, yeah, I was gonna say lie, but practitioner, but also, yeah, she's just straight up like, "I'm gonna harass this man." It's fun that she's like, "I'll give you some advice in exchange." That kinda reminded me of, like, The Witch or whatever and keeping things balanced.
Hmm.
Um, weirdly, like, a karmic consideration. Um, and it also seems like the book that Ms. Lewis brings might be Black Lamb's Blood,
Yeah.
um, which made me kind of excited. Um, but yeah, and then we get Grandma Rose being like, "Don't be fooled by that woman. You think she's nice? Like, what the fuck? Like, she's not crazy, which means like she was able to deal with all the horrible shit that she did. Like, she's almost at the top of this firm, which means she's probably like awful because she's willing to like do shit to get to the top of this firm.
And,
Um,
and like potentially thousands of years old.
right? Especially because of how, like, dismissive she is of, like, 5 lifetimes worth of however
Yeah.
many karmic debts or whatever. Yeah, it just makes me wonder, like, who was she and what did she do? The idea that, like, the universe had possibly had to invent something like the Black Death to cover up what she did is
Crazy.
fun, and makes the idea of the Black Death, like, more upsetting to think that it's a narrative to cover, what a Diabolist did.
Yeah, like is the story of Atlantis about like Miss Lewis or something,
Fuck.
like
And just but yeah, even she gets to a point where she joins this firm.
yeah.
Um And does she regret that? But also, what were the circumstances where she was like, okay, cool? Because presumably everyone joins this firm because demons or something, um, or like because the karmic weight is so bad. But like it's it's not even like being forsworn.
No.
Um, like unless the universe has somehow eased up on Rose or something. Like presumably she has all that karma sitting against her, but like, it's nothing like what Griffith or anyone, went through. Like even like Seth, like she can still watch TV. Like
Yeah, yeah.
um and so it seems like either you're like a cowardly piece of shit, or there's a demon standing there being like, I'm about to eat you.
Presumably, yeah. I mean, it is interesting that they don't target Forsworn people. I guess there's probably reasons.
Yeah, I wonder if, I mean, so they want Grandma Rose, I'm assuming because she is from an established line of practitioners. I mean, she's smart, she's um she has an established relationship with a lot of demons, it seems. Like as someone in the firm, she could, I mean, you lose everything, but maybe you don't lose your mind. And
Uh,
maybe she would keep some of her clout somehow, or
yeah,
they'd get her clout or something.
that's the thing. I think they'd get the Thorburn name, which
Hmm.
is obviously seemingly like a good perk.
Hmm.
And then also, I mean, she owns the house, and there's been a lot of hubbub about wanting the house
The house.
and the land that the house is on, and what's under the land that the house
I
is on.
know. Like, why else does this fucking house matter?
I mean, they did say early in the story that it's what's preventing Jacob's Bell from growing, because I think the house is also like they own a lot of the swampland or something behind
Right.
the house. So, like, part of the thing was everyone wanted the Thorburns to fuck off so that Jacob's Bell could grow and not just be a lordship, but like a kick-ass lordship that, like, is close to Toronto in strength.
Hmm. And so the lawyers could use that to leverage something or something.
Yeah, or make another Hamburg house, I guess.
Sounds bad. Um also the line where she says, "You're useless to me. Everyone around me is useless." And like it's so funny. And I think it reminds me of, I think in one of her diaries, she was like, "My children are useless." And like
Yeah.
it was like, you made them useless.
Yeah, that's
Like
your fault. Like, like on so many levels. Because first of all, you're the one who said they couldn't be practitioners, and that's how they would be useful to. But also, you're their fucking mom. Like,
right.
if your kids all suck, like, there's a common denominator there, right? Like,
Right. You raise them to be shitheads.
yeah, like in so many ways, that's your fault.
Yeah, it makes me wonder whether she harbors any sense of love or care for her children, because it seems like she has created Blake and Rose. She has like done all of these things to try to stop the Thorburn line from continuing as Diabolus.
Yeah,
And so I don't know if that's any sort of like altruism for her descendants, or if it's just like a, thus the demons will have slightly less of a claim on the world from not having this family. Um but
yeah, or some combo of both of those things. Yeah,
but it is a very stubborn, willful, like, this is hard shit that she's doing and that she's done and that she
yeah,
set up. It's complicated. It's, she's having to like train behames to be anti-demon people, and she's having to like cut her grandchildren very surgically into small pieces and like
we've all been there.
yeah, like make really complicated lists and hide what she's doing, but also leave enough of a clue so that maybe someone could figure out after she's dead, when she hasn't fucking talked to these people, what's up. And it seems like there's something really good in that. Um, like this fucking practitioner, like stupid little man, would not and could not. Um, she's extraordinary, but also she just like is such a bitch.
Yeah. She's like the embodiment of tough love. Like, it's like because she's doing things that like, as you said, it's like, I mean, I guess this is good, but like in just about the worst possible way. Like she's heartless in the way that she tries to seem to work for the greater good.
Right. Which is kind of fun. And it's just
Yeah.
things like Blake's bluntness and Rose, where she thinks to herself, like, I'm such a bitch, and like various things like that that just remind me so much of Grandma Rose. And
Yeah.
it's like, how much of that is you're descended from her, and how much of that is, every time I freak out and decide that Blake is actually a piece of Grandma Rose. Like,
Mm. I definitely think at the very least you could sort of be like, well, because we know Barbatorem, cut them in this very specific way and was also just wholesale taking some chunks out if it wasn't useful for either half.
uh-huh.
So it's like, the way Grandma Rose told him to cut them may have like caused some of those resemblances to occur just because you cut out some bits, like you align all the pieces in the right way and then they come out like her. Maybe she was just, because I love Grandma Rose, but she thought she was as great as anybody else could ever think she was. Like she loved herself.
Yes.
Um, so like, I doubt it is a coincidence that, her ideal way of cutting this child into created two kids who resemble her in a lot of ways because she certainly thought she was hot shit.
That's true. I thought you were gonna be like, maybe he cut out all the parts that were old, and I was like, huh?
Oh, and now we're talking.
No, but yeah. I yeah.
I mean, that would be like that's a funny idea. Like, cut out the oldness of a person. Like that seems like cheating, doesn't
I mean,
it?
it's
Like,
not worth it, but you have to make sure
also
that
that.
I guess the lawyers know who Blake and Rose are and whatever, and so they probably would have known if she had done that.
Yeah. Such a shame about Miss Lewis too, because she was like so cool.
I know. Why did she? I guess everything she was doing was to increase the chance that they would join the firm.
Well, and even like there's the bit at the end here. Oh, well, I guess we'll sort of talk about this. So, yeah, we cut to the present, and Levin, the third named partner, shows up and basically chastises Miss Lewis for playing with her food, and implies that this is just her being a sadist. So it's almost like she was just. It's more fun to drag it out, and I guess if you've got potentially thousands of years at the firm, maybe that's just her thing is dragging shit like this out if it's fun. Um,
Uh-huh.
but anyway, she gets kind of reined in a bit, and so she has Mur summon Fel, Callan, and Laird.
Yay. This was so much. But yeah, it's the way that Man and Grandma Rose and Levin all talk about Ms. Lewis. It's almost like she's like the scariest out of any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I guess is fun. Um, she, yeah, I don't know. It's this part is insane though because I thought the lawyers were like gonna fade out for a bit, but it seems like no, they just show up to be like, let's fight Toronto, I guess. Um,
It's just a shame because like Miss Lewis was already like the hot one in the story, and now it's like she's even more attractive because she's like got a bad streak in her,
because she's like a dominatrix now, not just. But yeah, they're just like, oh, this woman is so fucked up, and that's why she's being like at all cool or something. And it's an interesting thing where you're thinking about Rose and her determination to not push things too far in the last bit and to really leave the possibility of Miss Lewis open so that the others didn't, come and smack down on whatever.
Yeah,
But the lawyers are just like, oh, like stop fooling around, like just
yeah. That
totally yeah.
that seemingly only worked because Miss Lewis is so much of a sadist. She was willing to let it. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Like drag out this the end of these people or whatever. Um but yeah, so Myrrh seems to be able to summon dead people. Uh I'm not entirely sure what's up. It seems like, Fel, Callan, and Laird are actually here now or something, and presumably going to be forced to fight against
Ah,
these
so
people.
fun.
And then there's like some more, including 4 utterly black head to toe without features. And I didn't have a thought, but now my thought is that these are 4 people eaten by Or, like
Ooh.
4 of the knights. Um, because like the Fell, Callan, and Laird all have like strong connections to at least one person here. um and so then to be like, and some other randos feels odd. I guess I'm trying to think. I mean, like, Johannes just died, although Johannes is a weird like issue, but
Yeah.
like some other Behames died, and maybe, you know, maybe some of them are here as well or whatever, but it's because
Well, yeah.
like this,
Why are these ones black and
right.
like not fully formed?
No, you're right. And I mean, if anyone could summon people Ur had eaten, or maybe like mostly eaten or whatever, it'd be more demons. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like I wonder what is Mur's deal? Uh, like are these dudes, are they zombies? Like what is this? And also
Good
my,
question.
yeah, yeah, and then my thought
Question
was,
we're
does
all
Fell remember?
asking.
Is the question we're all asking, does Fell remember Blake? Because that was my question.
I'm. It's like because Fell was like my favorite character, and then and it's like it's so exciting that he's back, but also not like this.
I
Now he's working for the demons. Like, oh man.
know! And Laird! It's so great and so awful.
Does Laird remember Blake? Because if so, he might have some words to say to him.
Oh. I mean, yeah, my theory about Fell remembering Blake would apply to Laird as well, because like, you know, they died before he got.
Mm,
And so I really want them to. That would make me so happy. I mean, the thing is, like, they're not seeing him here, so they don't really have a
yeah.
reason to talk. But when, you know, Rose says tricks and Fell says, no, I'm sorry. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what he remembers about Toronto and what he thinks about Rose. And then I was like, I just want him to remember Blake. Oh, this
Yeah.
sucks.
What all like? I mean, well, because it's like which of Rose's tag-alongs do you think he'd be less impressed by, Blake, or she's also got Conquest sitting in there, who's
Uh,
Fell's other favorite person?
I think Fell actually liked Blake by the end. Yeah, he probably wouldn't be happy to realize Conquest was there.
Yeah.
Although
I
learning
mean,
that
nobody should be, to be fair. Like
he's not the Lord anymore, and you know, that's exciting.
he got to be Lord of Jacob's Bell for a minute, sort of.
Yeah, have they officially given that up yet? It seems like they're still sort
I
of.
think so.
Okay.
I
That's
don't know.
funny.
Guess we'll see in the next chapter.
Yeah.
But yeah, unless there's anything else, that's 15.x.
Yeah.
Fun times in Jacob's Bell.
Yeah, I mean the funnier thing was that like the two recent Pale chapters have been way more depressing. Um
Yeah.
this one's just like upsetting.
Yeah. And that's sort of the difference between these stories in a bit of a nutshell. Like Pale is a real, like, hits you very hard and complexly, like emotionally and stuff, whereas Pack
Uh-huh.
just sort of, gives you a bit of a slap on the head and
It's
it's
like,
just like,
ah.
suffer.
Yeah. But in a hype way.
Oh yeah.
You're hyped to suffer. Pale, you're like, no.
Well, it's like because like it is funny. Like having been revisiting the story the last few weeks, so these episodes with you, I'd forgotten how much like Pale. You finish a chapter, and you're often kind of hyped for the next one, but you also enjoy like sitting back and processing what you've just experienced and really like thinking on it and think about the story. Whereas like Pact, you finish a chapter and you're just like, all I want in the world is to hit the next chapter button. Like I cannot stop here. It's like
Yeah,
Pale encourages you to digest it. Pact is just like keep going, keep going.
yeah, I am really grateful for doing it this way. I mean, it'd be fun to have just read it all really fast, but I have gotten way more out of the story than I would have. Because like,
I know exactly what you mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would have just like flown through this and been like, oh, they
And
can't lie, weird. Like, I
yeah,
don't know, like,
missed everything. Yeah, 100%.
uh,
Okay, but yeah, I guess so this is the end of the arc, so should we talk a bit about what possession means?
yeah. So I copied and pasted my notes from the beginning of the arc, so that's what all this text is. And as a
Okay.
reminder, a couple of definitions of possession are the state of having, owning, or controlling something, an item of property, territory or country controlled or governed by another. Um,
Oh, and there was a lot of that in this arc. Like obviously, we got the lordship finally for a little bit.
right.
Um,
and then like the state of being controlled by a demon or spirit. I think we hit like all of this. This is kind of
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, so having, owning, or controlling something, this interlude, we talk a little bit about like Fisher. Um
Yep.
the idea that you give everything to us. His 570-ish years was like all he had. Um
Yep.
the yeah, and then item of property, a possession, I guess that's just like stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a lot of this story has been about various people wanting the Thorburn house. So, like,
Uh-huh.
fighting over the possession of that has been something that's been going on, the lawyers included. But I guess the Abyss finally won that auction. Because the Abyss certainly took possession of
The
the
house.
house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tried to take possession of Blake, but Rose diverted that into a different kind of possession.
Possession. Yeah, so
They got
Faisal
Alexis.
possessed Johannes, Barbatorem possessed Johannes, Blake possessed Rose, Conquest possessed Rose.
Wait,
Uh
possession all over the shop in this one. Yeah,
yeah.
Evan
The
volunteered to possess Rose.
the guys, the stupid little man's, that's his name now. The stupid little man's
I love that
brother
that's
and
your name for him.
that's him. Brother and little cousin and mom were
Yep.
possessed by demons eventually. Uh that's what I got from that. They like opened the books and let them in or something.
Yeah.
Um
Okay, this one might be a stretch, but Blake got all of his stuff back when the Abyss was trying to offer him
I yeah, I
the
did think of that. The locket and the
yeah.
sword, his possessions. Um and then yeah, they gain Jacob's Bell as a possession or
But they
whatever.
gave it back.
And then they gave it back. Wow, this arc was chock full of possession.
This is one of the craziest arcs in Pact because it's just like it's crazy that this was only 8 chapters and that was all of the library, Blake being possessed by Rose, like this talk with the lawyers. Like each of those could have been their own arc if if you
Oh
wanted
yeah.
to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Johannes, yeah,
Yeah.
Barbatorem in and out, just
Oh, there were implications. Johannes gave possession of his domain to Dionysus. Sorry, Jeremy. Did I say Johannes? I meant Jeremy.
yeah. Yeah.
Sandra's husband.
Right. The I'm trying to think if Kathy has anything to do with possession. I mean, Kathy's just sad.
Yeah. Kathy doesn't matter anymore. Even more
Uh,
expendable than Ellie.
uh, but yeah, this is a great arc. This was yeah. I'm excited to looking or to when I look back on this story, and try to figure out what like my favorite, most standout arcs were. But this one was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it really captures the balls to the wall, crazy high adrenaline energy of Pact really well. Like this is an arc that does not relent.
And I think part of it is I mean, yeah, the twists are so like insane and how well it relates to the arc title is so satisfying.
Hmm.
Um the lawyers, the demon, yeah,
And big character moments too.
Blake and
Like Blake
Rose.
Blake and Rose
Yeah.
have a bunch of big moments. Like
Yeah.
yeah.
Really good ships.
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit on the Discord, but like, what is going on with the Bahame and Thorburn families? Because like we've got Rose and Alistair, and that's not a what did Blake say? Not a pairing of love yet, but like then we've
It's
got Ainsley
yeah.
and Peter, who we all obviously ship crazy hard.
Mhm.
But that like Grandma Rose also had a thing with
Amen. Yeah.
Eamon, thank you. Yes. And like she worked with Laird now. So, like this is like Connor and Kelsey's family. Like someone needs to keep these two apart. Like the entire family. It's crazy.
I know. I'm also started listening to Deep Impact again, and I'm on arc 11, and so that's when we meet Alistair and the Bahames are like fighting, and they're just like around, and every time they're mentioned, it's just like fucking Bahames, and now I'm like Bahames, like
Yeah.
it's such a
You know,
funny.
It turns out when Thorburns say fucking behames, they didn't mean it as an insult. It was a suggestion.
Yep.
But yeah, just it just feels like, I mean, because I know chronomancers are generally like pretty boring, but like, are you that desperate for excitement in your lives? Like, just
There's probably
no,
better options than the demon family.
yeah, like, there's gotta be.
Uh,
Anyway, okay, so there is a little heading here in the doc that just says, "Where is this going?" And I don't know if this is separate from the bold and specific prediction or.
yeah, well, kind of. Just trying to orient where we are, where we're going. So last chapter I thought we were going to the abyss again, and we're probably maybe still going down to the abyss, but first we gotta fight our beloved departed. Um our dearly whatever they are.
Well, not
Uh
anymore.
yeah. Uh it seems like we're gonna have to deal with this situation. I mean, unless it's just like, fuck, we're running into the abyss again to get away, but that seems stupid.
Yeah, and remember, like, we've seen Miss Lewis in the Abyss before.
Right,
She
she's
pop,
fine.
yeah, and because she had that sort of otherworldly thing that Man had going in this chapter, because that was the one that was actually where Blake tried to sign up for the firm, and she was like, "No, we don't want you anymore."
Right.
Like he finally gave in and broke and said yes, and they're like, "No,
That was awful.
yeah." Um, like even this guy got the okay, but they didn't even want Blake. Like, ouch. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so like the Abyss isn't an ideal hiding spot, I don't think,
No.
because we've seen them get in there.
Yeah. But I mean, so like Toronto's here. It sounded like we were going to try to deal with the face all situation, but now we got to fight. I mean, stuff moves so fast and packed that it's like we'll probably deal with this situation in the next two chapters tops and be, in the abyss or in Toronto or like somewhere like
Yet trying to predict where Pact will be in 5 chapters is a bit of a fool's game. I mean, that hasn't let either of us stop trying. But yeah.
it just seems like there's got to be a path that we're following. But yeah, and I mean, at some point, it does seem like the seventh choir, the choir of unrest, keeps getting mentioned, and I don't know if that's it. I don't know if that's fun, like Walbo exploring the idea of like kind of the weird, like the most eccentric choir, because it did seem like earlier in the story, like the choir of darkness was really harped on with Ur and
Mm.
Grandma Rose's speculations on the universe or whatever. But then it almost like it's been harped on so much in the past like couple of chapters that like maybe the choir of unrest is going to have something to do with the resolution of the story. Like we have an arc left, which is insane. Like what are we doing? What how are we resolving this? I don't
Oh, I'm having flashbacks to our 15.x episode listening to this.
what are we
Peruse.
doing?
Yeah. I do blame Arc 16 in part for me constantly thinking Pale could wrap up in an arc because, like, you're sitting here at the end of 15 years, it's like, how is this all done in an arc?
It apparently is. I haven't heard anything, I don't think, about the ending of Pact, which I'm like grateful about in terms of, is it satisfying? Is it depressing? Is it, triumphant? Is it like bittersweet? I don't know, which is kind of nice. I
Mm,
mean, I don't see it being like, yeah, we all got fixed, but
yeah. Well, and the world doesn't end because there's Pale, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But is Jacob's Bell a knotted place? Like, we just don't know.
Yeah, well.
Do we ever see Mags again? We just don't know. Like, probably, right? Does anyone get fucking Johanna Duchamp at the goddamn Fairy House? I don't know. I'm so upset.
Also, yeah, well, no, you know what? I will say nothing. um, Cool. Well, I guess this brings us to the Pale in comparison section. Are
Okay.
there any specific comparisons to Pale that you want to call out?
I feel like we've been calling out some good ones, but one that I
Yeah.
sort of saved because I had written it down here was just that Grandma Rose reminds me of Rook. Like they have similar like old lady don't give a shit vibes. And I
I
thought that
see
was
that.
fun. Yeah. In the
Yeah.
way she's just like not holding anything back talking to the guy. It felt kind of like Rook.
Yeah, I love that. They do have that same "I'm too old to give a fuck" vibe, don't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't care what you think about me. I've got my worldview. Deal with it. Yeah, I also just wanted to call out. I thought it was fun to consider how the lawyer's offer compares to what Charles offered, like the Forsworn. Like his band of stupid little men like Seth and Griffin and Yeun. Um, those are the three who are all very similar. Um, just because obviously I think, as you said, being Forsworn is kind of this fate worse than death sort of situation, and I think there's some interesting comparisons to be drawn between what Charles offers versus what the lawyers do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it is supposedly Charles will let you go. He like
Yeah.
says, "Hey, want to join my super cool club?" But if you're like, "Nah, thanks for unforswearing me," though, he's like, "Okay, bye," which
Hmm.
is very much not
Yeah. The demons don't have that out.
right. Um, and even with all the other shit Yiyun swore, she is still not in that situation anymore. Um,
Yeah.
which is nice.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely one of the big perks. And I do think, as much as we hate Charles right now in Pale, I do think working for Charles is probably better both from how your life goes and also even morally than working for the demon lawyers.
Oh yeah.
Like, if I had to like pick someone out of a demon warrior or like Helen, I'm probably still gonna pick Helen.
Yeah.
God,
It's
that's sad to
also
say.
well, the way the insinuations around this chapter are that like your life only gets worse when
Yeah.
you take the lawyer's deal, but like their lives have all gotten a lot better taking Charles's deal. Um
Well, I mean, yes, they're not forsworn, so yes.
right, I mean like Griffin is like horrifyingly traumatized and needs a lot of therapy,
Yeah.
but he's also not experiencing all the like stuff in the forest anymore. Um
Yeah, good
And
point.
so I think that his life has gotten better even if it's not good.
Yeah, like I think, he's making people like Teddy or even Kira Lynn's lives actively worse. But
Oh,
for the
totally.
Forsworn,
Yeah.
it's like he's not fixing them perfectly,
No.
but it's a net result. It reminds me of what Bristow used to do with his Aware, right? Like Bristow's Aware
Mm,
were better than they would be in the wild, but he wasn't investing too much in actually fixing them because he still wanted them to be useful to his collection.
right, he wanted them to be trapped
Yeah,
and reliant on him, but there had to be something beneficial out of the arrangement that would make it
yeah.
worth it for them to stick around.
Charles really has just taken the worst parts of Alexander, Bristow, and
And
Mossa, hasn't
Musser.
he? An idiot. Cool. Well, bold and specific prediction time, Malia. We're heading into the final arc. There's only a few chapters left. You've got to have a complete picture of where we're going from here. So hit us with the most boldest and the most specificest predictions.
I have one that I don't actually believe, but would be interesting, which is that Faisal is not an angel of the seventh choir, he's a demon of the seventh choir. Um,
Ooh.
doesn't make sense in terms of having seen his interlude and how he pontificates about creating the rivers and the shit, but it feels like something is up with the choir of unrest.
I will say one of the first others we heard about in this whole story were Eva and Andy talking about Fairy, who was so good at convincing themselves they were vampires they started to believe it themselves.
That's true. He just also is convincing other people. I mean, maybe.
I say
Uh
like that sort of that sort of delusion probably starts with yourself, I guess, is all I'm saying.
True. What's another? I'm just like Mags is out there, Sandra's out there, uh the rocket launcher's out there.
There's I mean Blake is not out there. Do you have any thoughts on what's going to happen to old little wing boy?
I guess I don't know.
Very fair.
Like part of me is like I mean this isn't a good prediction at all because it's everything basically, but either he's going to get out of Rose or they're going to like fuse kind of more or they're both going to die having failed that. So that's not a great prediction. Alistair's hand is gone. Green Eyes is pissed. Was Green Eyes around in the last chapter? She must have
Yeah,
been.
I think, but like we're in Rose's head for most of that chapter, so it was like she just doesn't care. But I think she tells Green Eyes and Evan to get ready, and then doesn't really think about them again.
Laird. God, more people will die in this story.
I don't feel like that's particularly bold as a prediction. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be so Grandma Rose blonde.
It's also not very specific.
That too, but I think the boldness is the bigger problem. With some people will die. Impact.
Okay. Faisal will end up having to restore some things and like work against the demons without letting them like in the short term. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like he can't. He's gonna have to work against the lawyers now. Is
Yeah, and
what you're
like
saying? Yeah.
well, because I'm thinking about Jacob's Bell and like, does it become a knotted place? And I think the thing that makes me think that it doesn't is Ainsley, or who we think is Ainsley, Ms. Bahame, when she's talking to whoever in Ottawa, uh, and she gets and the lords, Charles's lords, and how they're fucking everything up or whatever, and she gets like freaked out about her hometown, and they're like, no, don't, like, it's fine, don't worry about it or something. So that's
Yeah.
what makes me think that it ends up okay, which makes me think that like something has to step in, and whether, I mean, Isadora is pretty cool and powerful, but Faisal, it makes the most sense in terms of counteracting demons, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sorry, I just we should talk about like because I don't know that we're going to have time to do a back to back on any time by reflections, but obviously, you've read 24.a?
Uh-huh.
So with that was presumably Ainsley again, dropping Percy 2.0 on Charles.
It was so lovely.
I especially love the chronomancy flex, like knowing how that works from Pact. I love the idea that she's just gonna turn, like, you just turn Percival on, and then you sit there and you bank that time, baby. Like you've got days. Like, yeah,
Yeah, made me wonder what the quality of that time would be, but
it can't be high. It's just
yeah, but it's still time.
yeah. Well, and like Charles, maybe like the stakes of the meeting and Charles's
Hmm,
what I presume is just unfettered rage at this situation. Maybe that gives it a bit of a boost in quality.
that's true. It
But
is
yeah,
very
also,
important.
yeah, it's just either way, even if it's not high quality time, it's still, I mean, you got to skip that time.
you, you can't suffer through that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just so like, I mean, because we gotta like, oh, Ottawa, cool, like they were awesome and they helped out, and also a fun like, oh, Ainsley maybe, and this is just like a like, yes, like absolutely. There was
Yeah.
also a brief mention of the Duchamps again, as
Right. Yeah.
we were reminded that Charles helped them take Toronto.
Fucking idiot. Like, because that was what Mossa made that deal with them, and then apparently Charles just made the same. Like, oh,
Which is also just so funny. I wonder, I mean, like, where's Sandra? Where's Jeremy? Are they alive? Are they involved? Like, so funny.
yeah.
Good for them, I guess. I don't know. Fucking Duchamps.
No comment.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, I should we head on to our discussion question from last week?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love this question. I'm sad that there's such a small window between us releasing the last episode and having to record this one because it's been short. But I
Right.
think
So,
Jenny,
yeah, sorry for anyone who we didn't get to talk about your question. It's probably just because you haven't posted it yet.
yeah. So our schedules are getting not so free, so we're recording this one quite soon after the
Hmm.
last episode. Um, but yeah, so we, I think it was Jenny who asked which
Hmm.
demonic choir best represents your country.
Yes. So Airlig started out saying that they're from Norway. So the Seventh Choir, Unrest, in part because of they're a big oil and energy supplier, also renewable energy, so gotta keep things going. Um
I love the call out that they're like kind of selling the rest of the world poison through the oil. But then also they sell the renewable energy, so you also get a partial. Like, they're playing both sides.
yeah, that is a fun demonic resonance, I suppose.
Mm.
And then also identified darkness for, I'm presuming, winter, but also sometimes the antithesis of darkness because the sun doesn't set.
Yeah, which like I actually think, and I think I commented this in the thread too. I actually think that might suit the fourth choir, which is madness, because that's the choir that was like the fourth day is when God made like the moon and the stars, and there's a lot of stuff there about like star maps and stuff for how you travel and you track time using moon phases and obviously the day and night cycle as well. So, like the fourth choir, I think, is called out as messing with like fate and your understanding of time and stuff. And so, like
Right.
living in a place where the sun doesn't set for months, to me, feels like fourth choir madness sort of stuff would happen to me.
Yeah.
So, good on you, Norway, with your fourth and first and seventh choirs.
Just mix them all up in there.
We had Spinagon as well, who's apparently from Russia and agreed with what you said about that being potentially darkness.
Woo. Although maybe also your interpretation of the fourth choir makes sense too.
Yeah, I guess yeah. I guess it depends on what part of because Russia's so big. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an interesting thing too. Not just in darkness in terms of winter, but darkness in terms of like the vast expanses of like
yeah, yeah, like empty
emptiness.
regions.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then we also got an answer from Stuck in Reddit Factory, who's an Australian,
Yeah.
and
Didn't agree
they've
with you?
pitched. Yeah, they disagree, but I like their answer, and they've given two answers, one for the country of Australia, and then one for the country, which they've left it to me to explain the difference, um, which feels like this is a bit of an allyship pop quiz because I believe they're using the term country as it's generally used in the context of Indigenous Australian peoples.
Huh.
Um, so I'll do the countries and the nation of Australia first because that's the easy one. But they went with the seventh choir just because it's like the newest. Oh, we're one of the newest countries. Like Australia is what 122 years old. It was 1901 that we became a thing.
Oh wow.
We did our 100th, the nation's 100th birthday was like a thing when I was at school, and we all got little coins.
Cool.
Um, anyway, but yeah, so we're kind of new, but then also because of Australia's allies, we tend to have a lot more political influence around the world than we probably deserve to, because we're kind of working with and exploiting powers that already exist. And then also climate change feels very seventh choir, and as Stuck in Reddit Factory points out, Australia is not helping with the climate change.
And then so what is country in the indigenous people sense?
Yeah, so I think that's what we're referring to. And I just want to preface this with saying I am not an Indigenous Australian, and I'm going to do my best to explain this, but apologies if it's not quite right. So my understanding is like when you get like a welcome to country or something from an Indigenous person, my understanding of that is like the country doesn't just apply to like say the land, but like also the plants, the animals, and
Hmm.
the history and the peoples of the place. It's kind of like there's not a distinction between just the land as like a property developer might view it, and the flora, the fauna, and the people, and yeah, like the historical, the people who died on a land in previous generations are just as much a part of the country as people who are visiting it for the first time, or more so than people visiting it for the first time.
Red.
So like, yeah, I think like the comparison I'd make is like calling or referring to like the land in terms of just as like a Westerner would, where we just consider it like a boundary and like the physical land would almost be like talking about a person as just a brain. Like,
Hmm.
yes, the brain is where all the thoughts are or whatever, but there's no point having a brain unless you've got like a body and a face and a mouth for that brain to do things with. And it's like the land is the whole human body, not just the brain. Anyway, so then yeah, Stuck in Reddit Factory kind of goes from there to talk about how like ruin and madness are probably the ones if you're talking about like Australia or Australian country, just because part of like God, I feel like I'm the least qualified person to be introducing these concepts, but there's like the philosophy / mythology of dreaming, which is what like most Indigenous Australian tribes used, has all this stuff about like the origins of the world as well as what it still is. There's not really a distinction between creation myths and the present day in
Hmm.
to dreaming. Like they use the term every when to describe the dreaming because it's not in the past, it's not in the present, it's not in the future. It just is. Anyway, um, there's lots of stuff there about like how the world formed, and it was just kind of like deities emerging from the earth, shaping it for life, putting the life there, and then sort of returning to the earth. And that's the sort of that's the sort of stuff that Stuck in Reddit Factory talks about, where like during this period when the earth was being created, there was the development of species of patterns, fates were decided. Like it was in these early dreaming times that like the rules of like social order were decided. So it was like the way that the deities interacted was kind of what determined what was and wasn't the right thing to do. The Second Reddit Factory specifically calls out the Prometheus legend as a comparison, which I think is a good one. Like, Prometheus gave humans fire and was punished for it, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
that sort of stuff in dream legends. And yeah, everyone could shapeshift back then too, so everything was a lot more fluid. It's very like choir of ruin. Like this was the structure was kind of being built out of chaos, I guess.
Hmm.
And anyway, then yeah, the way dreaming works is it's kind of like an oral history that's passed down so that the indigenous peoples can uphold the values that those ancestral spirits set in place. But it's kind of timeless. Like some dream stories go back like 80,000 years or something. So I think that's where Stuck in Reddit Factory is pulling madness in from. That sort of timeless aspect to dreaming stories.
That is
I I
super
hope that was
cool.
right. Yeah,
Um, I
indigenous
won't
dreaming
hold it.
stuff.
Yeah, hold you to it.
Yeah, so indigenous dreaming stuff is really cool, and it's a shame that it doesn't get more attention globally because I think it is. It's often misrepresented though. I think is the problem, and it's why indigenous people here can be quite protective of it now.
Mhm.
Because like it was called Dream Time for when I was
Hmm.
growing up at least, and then they've changed it to the Dreaming because Dream Time was a bad name for it because it's not meant to be a different time. It is
Mhm.
now as well. And I think even Dreaming is considered a bad translation as well because like it's not like this is a separate plane or like it's not in dreams. It's just I think the consensus is that the term dreaming is as close as English is going to get.
That's really cool, and this makes me grateful that we used the word country because I was almost thinking like, people, it doesn't have to be your country. You can talk about your town or like whatever. But I was kind of like, country is easy. Let's just leave it. And apparently that led to being able to talk about this whole other idea of country that I didn't know about. And like, yeah, this and what you were talking about with um Norway and various things makes me want to learn a lot more about the fourth choir because like time and fate and yeah, uh are just really interesting.
Yeah, well, I think the fourth choir, like I would also assume that the concept of cause and then effect is the fourth choir's domain. So you could probably get like fourth choir
Mhm.
demons who disrupt the idea of cause and effect. So maybe
Wow.
effect creates cause or something, which is like you could do some mind bending stuff with the fourth choir, I reckon. I did post a little thing in that thread on how I think the choirs work, which asterisks there because I don't think I have the best grasp on it. But if that helps people answer this, cool.
Yeah. Um but anyway, uh it probably time to decide a new discussion question. You have your holiday time though. Does that mean a holiday for everyone?
Yeah, I didn't know if you wanted to run a discussion question because I know you guys are about to go on hiatus for for a chunk of time. Um,
I just have
so
this
I don't
thing
know if
where in the first episode Jenny was like, "Oh, we'll run one sometimes, we won't run one all the time," and we've literally always had one, and so I'm like, "We
preaching
must."
preaching to the choir there. Yeah. Um,
But we
well,
could do
yeah, I don't know
yeah.
if you want to do something different. Like I don't know if there's a spin you can put on it because it's going to potentially be a one that's sitting there for a while.
Yeah, I
Because
mean
I don't know if you know this, Millie, you've got a wedding and then a honeymoon coming up.
I figure people can just sort of post it when they post it, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, I said that in like a couple weeks." Um, but we could do one about. I was thinking vows could be kind of fun in terms of like a wedding
Oh yeah.
sort of thing, or we could do something about holidays. I skimmed through our notes in the chapter again, and I'm like, this is an upsetting chapter. I was like, zombies, who would you want to come back from the dead to fight you? Like,
What would it take for you to join the lawyers? Like, if we thought people weren't keen to get Blake's Abyssal Gatekeeper job.
but yeah, do you have ideas, vows, or holidays?
Yeah, I don't. Who's your favorite Otherverse couple?
Oh, that could be fun. I don't know if we've talked about that.
Just because, as you said, there was a lot of shipping potential in this arc. Like, obviously, the correct answer to that discussion question would be Faisal and Miss Lewis. But there are other contenders. You've got, Ainsley and Peter, and then and Pale. You've got, Connor and Kelsey,
mm-hmm.
Kira Lynn and Teddy.
No.
All these great couples.
But yeah, I think that's a fun one. Who's your favorite? Who's your Otherverse OTP, and why? Is it that you find them aspirational? Is that you find them like funny, like fun to read about, like a train wreck waiting to happen? Yeah,
Yeah, I
I
like
love
it.
that.
Okay, great. Well, yeah. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends, leave a rating and review, spread the packed virus. To support the podcast, go to patreon.com/doofmedia. And if you'd like to support Wildbow as he continues to write these fantastic stories, go to patreon.com/Wildbow.
You can follow the pod on Twitter at Pale Comparison or send us an email at paleincomparisonpod@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for our Reddit thread in r/parahumans, where you can answer our discussion question and share your thoughts on this episode. In addition, if you would like to see all of my predictions laid out, check out our episode description for a link to a prediction tracker. Next episode, we will be covering chapters 16.1 and 16.2.
That's a good breaking point. I like it. So I guess before we go, just a quick fun fact, which is the first law school existed in 450 BC. So that's a pretty long time.
Yeah. I wonder if...
And I mean, at this rate, Miss Lewis could have gone there.
I wonder if they stopped to let them, take classes or whatever. Like, can you go learn some principles of contracts or something? Come back.
What, in the demon lawyers?
Yeah.
I feel like it's on the job training and not in a good way.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
But yeah, it was in what is now Beirut in Lebanon, this first law school, and they taught Roman law.
I guess that's useful if, got to send people. I guess the Romans were everywhere, so.
Yeah. But yeah, apparently the Roman emperors were big fans of the place. So yeah, that's, the world's second oldest profession, lawyering.
Lawyers. That's depressing.
And with that, we'll see you later.
Yeah, and thank you so much again, Elliot, for coming on. This has been fun.
Thanks for having me.
A nice 3-beat.
Yes, I'm excited to go back to being a listener when Jenny comes back. Though it's been really sad having these episodes pop up in my podcatcher and being like, oh, I can't listen to that one.
I mean, if you were narcissistic like me, you could do it.
No, I've tried. It's awful.
But yeah, so we're not sure exactly what date we're coming back because wedding and honeymoon and various things, but we will be back. Maybe we'll drop something into the feed in the meantime. But thanks, y'all. Hopefully this is a fun spot to take a break.
I mean, you're gonna know more than anyone else, I think, whether this works.
At least I get to read the next 2 chapters. Awesome. Okay. Bye.